guys, welcome to my channel and welcome to my January reading wrap up. Damn, already the first reading wrap up of this year. But I want to keep this short and sweet because I have talked about, I feel like, most of these books in other videos. So if you want to hear more about a particular book, there's probably another video you could check out. So yeah, let's get right into it. We are going to start off with two non-fiction books. Now, if you know me or like my reading taste, even like a little bit, you know, I never pick up non-fiction. I'm really not interested in those non-fiction kind of works. I 100% prefer fiction over non-fiction. And yet, these two books are non-fiction. So the first book I have started reading this month is The Daily Stoic. Now, I got this gifted for Christmas. This basically is built up in this way that you read a page a day. There's always like a little quotation from either like Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Epicure, like an ancient Greek, Latin, or like whatever philosopher. And then there's a paragraph beneath it that kind of like interprets the message of this original quote and applies it to modern day life, or shows you how you could incorporate that message into your personal life and all of that. Now, to be really honest, it's not giving me all that much. I mean, it's fine, but like even within the first month already, some of the messages have definitely like been repeating themselves. For example, this message of focus on things that are within your control and let go of things that you can't control and don't obsess over them, or like stuff like that. That's, of course, that's good advice in general, but I'm not like obsessed with it. It is fine, but it's not like really giving me a whole lot. I will continue this. I mean, it's only like not even like a page, more like 2 paragraphs a day, so I will definitely continue, but I feel like I can give you more of an in-depth update or whatever once I maybe like half a year into this. So that's the first thing I started this year. The other non-fiction I'm reading right now, though, I am a big fan of, and that is Agatha Christie's Autobiography. Now, I technically started this in December, but in December I only read like the first 15 pages, so the majority of this I have been reading now in January, and I have pretty much just reached the halfway point. I am really enjoying this. It is, of course, fascinating to learn about Agatha Christie's life, especially out of her perspective. It is insane, the details that this woman remembers. Like, she wrote this over the span of 10 or 15 years, but only like in her later years in life. Let's say, I don't know if this is accurate, but let's say she started when she was like 50, for example. Like, she had already lived a chunk of her life, right? But still, the detail of like plays she came up with as a child when she was like 5 is insane. Like, she remembers a whole lot. Like, I would say at least half of this is about like her childhood. Then we moved on to her like teenage years and all of that, and now she is already married to Archie Christie, like her first husband, and she's working as a nurse and now at a pharmacy and all of that. And I have just reached that part where she talks about having written her first ever detective story, which is The Affair at Stars, featuring Hercule Poirot. Her life as an author basically only now starts at like the halfway point. In case you're interested in like reading about that part in particular about her life, it only starts at like this point. But personally, because I'm such a big Agatha Christie fan, I'm also interested in, well, everything else that went on in her life, and I love reading this out of her perspective. She's really funny. There are a lot of very funny or like sarcastic commentaries in this book as well that I really enjoy. There are also like a lot of very like wise life lessons or whatever in here as well. I highlight everything that I will potentially want to get back at, and it's quite a lot actually. So this will also be fun to reread at some point and go through all these passages again that I highlighted. But I definitely want to pick up her other 2 non-fiction memoir work, as they're being referenced in like this syllabus basically of all of her work. That is Come Tell Me How You Live and The Grand Tour. They, I think, are both mainly about her experiences while traveling or like while living in Syria and like other places abroad. So that is Agatha Christie's Autobiography. Really enjoy it. Now let's move on to fiction though. The first book, other than these 2, like I'm still working on both of them, obviously, the first book I finished this month was The Picture of Dorian Gray. I read this for uni. I really enjoyed it. I made like an entire video about easily approachable classic recommendations for beginners in general, and I featured this in it because I had a really good time reading it. I think it's really accessible, really easy to read. It is easy to understand what's going on. We have quite a, let's say, maybe fun plot as well, because it features like some fantastical elements. This is also quite thin, of course, so it's not as daunting in aspect to read this as some other thicker classics. If you don't know, this is about Dorian Gray, though he only, I would say, starts becoming like the protagonist maybe about halfway into the book. The first half, two of his friends and him are basically the protagonists. I would say like we spend equal time with all of them. And then the big thing happens, and that is that Dorian Gray himself, he stops aging, but this portrait of him starts to age in his place. But it's not only about getting older, aging in that sense, but also every time Dorian does something ethically incorrect, morally gray in his life, you also see like the repercussions of that, or like the effects of that in his portrait. But he of course stays young and beautiful, and you could never tell that he also becomes a very morally gray, and that is phrasing it nicely, character himself. We have a very strong moral and ethical, maybe message is the wrong word, but like discussion in this book, featured in this book as well. And yeah, like from top to finish, I really enjoyed it. I think it's quite an easy classic to approach, and this is definitely something that you could also read several times and always see different aspects, or like focus on different aspects and think about them some more. Like we're also discussing this in class right now, and I'm really enjoying that. Now, moving on, I'm going to talk about all three of these books in one go, because these are the first three parts of the DUNE series. Now, I have a very long video focusing mainly on the first part. I also like compare to the movie and stuff of DUNE, so I'm not going to talk about the first part right here because you can check out this other video. I already started talking about the second part in that other video, but I had only like read like half basically of the second part while I was recording that other video. So now watch out, hella spoilers ahead, so jump ahead if you don't want to hear about spoilers for DUNE 2 and the following books. So I already mentioned in that other video that in this second part that plays 12 years ahead in the future than this one. Paul is now the emperor. The jihad, this holy war, has been taking place, is still taking place. He has a lot of enemies at this point, and people are plotting against him. As Paul has like his supernatural powers, his visions and all of that, obviously he knows about everything that's going on and still lets certain things happen, even though he could have prevented them because he knew exactly what the other people were planning. And this ends with Paul not only losing his vision physically, but also this like supernatural vision that he had, and he ends up going into the desert to die. But we do not actually witness him dying, so I'm not at all sure if he's actually dead. And already in the third book, I'm gonna talk about that in a second, it is being referenced that he might not actually be dead, but he's not this like prophet person wandering the desert, but that's apparently also spewing some sort of controversial shit. I don't know, I'm not very far into this one yet, but because Paul, at least theoretically, dies at the end of this book, in the third book, his children are now the protagonists. Now, by the end of this book, Chani, Paul's wife, concubine, mate for life, that is played by Zendaya in the movie, she bears twins and dies while doing so. Both Paul and Chani are now dead. Like, Chani's dead for sure, Paul, not so sure. But now, basically, his two children, they're called Leto and what's the girl called? Ganima. They are now the protagonists, I think. I mean, of course, some people from like the first two books are still alive, such as Stilga. Jessica is also still around, but she has basically not been around for the second book, but now she's coming back to DUNE as well. And again, the third book takes place, oh gosh, I forgot, 6 or 10 years into the future again. From this point on, so the twins are not infants anymore, but they are still awfully young, but they are also like born with this like vision, these prescience, and all of that. I really don't know yet what's gonna happen in this third part. Again, I did not read what is written on the back because I fear it would spoil some stuff. So yeah, I really don't know what's gonna happen, but it already, like, I'm only like 2 or 3 chapters into this at this point, but it was already insinuated kind of that the twins, they definitely don't trust their grandmother, like Paul's mother, Jessica. And they also have their doubts about Elia, that's Paul's sister. Now, I have not talked about her, oh my gosh, at all in these 2 books because that other video was already like long enough, so I didn't open that chapter. But so I think maybe some family intrigues are gonna be featured in this because different family members are gonna be plotting against each other or like whatever. I really don't know what's gonna happen. But yeah, I have just started this and rewatched Dune for like the third time yesterday night. Okay, then really quickly, I read another Agatha Christie and tried to solve it as I was reading it. I have a very long video dedicated to this quest. If you want to find out what that murder was about and if I actually ended up solving it, check out that video. Last but not least, I also dedicated an entire video to this, is The Gilded Wolves, the first part in a YA fantasy series that I picked up, inspired by the recommendations of my two favorite BookTubers. Now, this is a heist novel. Basically, we have our teenage group of misfits and they steal a bunch of stuff. And it takes place in Paris, and it was okay. It wasn't like obsessed with it, but it was fine. Check out that other video if you want to hear a bit more. I am going to continue the series, and I already ordered the second part, so you will probably hear about the second part, The Silver Serpents, in either a dedicated video or like in my February reading wrap up. So those were all the books I read in January or like continued reading in January, such as the Autobiography, and started in January, such as the third part of the DUNE series. Overall, I'm quite happy. I'm always surprised at the end of the month how much I ended up reading, because right now I'm like truly kind of busy in like my personal life with a lot of stuff, which would make you think that maybe I don't have as much time to pick up books here and there. But because I love reading so much, I like picking up books and reading them. That's what I like to do in my pastime. That's what I do on my way to work, on my way back, in like my lunch break. I do it before I go to bed. I do it when I come home because I love doing it. That's my way of relaxing. So I still manage to read quite a lot, obviously. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got some recommendations out of it maybe. Check out those other videos if you want to learn a bit more about some of these books. And we're gonna see you in the next video. Bye!